Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Eden Zero, Chapter 116. So, right out of the gate, the chapter starts off with Shiki using his ether gear to rip the glue off the others, leading to the usual fan service. But the one thing that I think this chapter really achieved in regards to fan service this week is that it actually answered a question that's been nagging at me for a while. Why do I like the fan service more and just in general just find the fan service a lot funnier in Eden Zero than I ever did in Fairy Tail. And I think the answer all comes down to pretty much simple creativity. In Fairy Tail, the fan service would more or less just happen at random times without a whole lot of rhyme or reason. Like I'm like it's one of those things where there wasn't really any kind of like as weird as it sounds, when it came to the fan service in Fairy Tail, there wasn't any structure there wasn't any structure in which the fan service was supposed to happen. It just kind of always happened. And I know that's kind of strange to bring up when it comes to how fan service is used, but it was always kind of the biggest flaw I found with Fairy Tail's fan service is that it never happened. It never happened like pretty much naturally, and because of that, and because of that, it was one of those times where it was funny the first couple times, but after a while, the joke it did eventually die out and become stale. Whereas with Eden Zero, by incorporating the fan service into the scenarios itself, Mashima is in some ways creating new and inventive ways in order to use the gag. And by making the simplest changes of basically how of the environment in which he uses the fan service, it keeps the comedy of it fresh enough to still be funny. Now, mind you, I'm not saying this applies. What I'm saying is going to apply to everyone. But it definitely applies to me. And now I've basically viewed like Mashima's own brand of fan service. It's one of those where where this chapter in Eden Zero as a whole, it's really showed how pretty much Mashima has managed to use his fan service correctly, whereas Fairy Tail it was a little more iffy. But yeah, I'm not gonna harp on that too much, but it is something I've finally clued into, I think. Um, Getting away from that though, after everyone is freed, they immediately get separated, but from being attacked by I can only assume which are basically military drones, or military drones, and with the attack being from being by pretty much by being by pretty much by the pretty much Foresta military drones, it does two things. First, even though a large part of this attack was probably due to the reprogramming, it also gives a sense of just how far like it's how pretty much Foresta is willing in order to maintain its from neutrality and non-violence policy. Like again, even though a large portion of what we can assume as to why those drones attacked to begin with has to do with the has to do with the fact that that those drones were pretty much reprogrammed. It's still one of those things where it does provide a little background as to just how far that from Foresta even before all this was willing to go in order to maintain its peace, its neutrality, and its sense of non-violence. Pretty much like it's kind of an ironic way to do it, but you can kind of see it's kind of the same time you can kind of it's one of those things where you can understand where they're coming from. Like yeah, they just want to end things as quickly as possible to ensure that they don't have to freaking that they can maintain their neutrality and whatnot. But even putting that aside, I love how Mashima not only used this as a means to set the stage for the battles, but between Team Beast and the Eden Zero crew, but he also did it in a way that created some interesting team ups and dynamics that are slightly out of the norm for our characters' usual opponents. And these fights, I think, are going to be quintessential to knowing whether or not our heroes are actually prepared this time in order to fight one of the demon generals. Because if they aren't, then this is just gonna be a repeat of Drac and Joe all over again, and maybe even worse. Because if memory serves, they could when the whole battle with Drac and Joe kind of officially started, our Eden Zero crew they could pretty much barely even beat like the like Drac and Joe's men, like the ones that weren't even included as part of the Element Four. Like our heroes had problems just beating like the just the lower tiered subordinates. So just so just so yeah, winning these battles, I think, in a certain way, is kind of key to show who is prepared for Poseidon Nero and who isn't. And the one thing I really want to see with this setup is how Rebecca is going to fight Brittany and utilize her power against her, because I have a feeling that one thing that is going to come into play with her fight specifically is a little development on how Rebecca uses her power. And I have a feeling that's going to be important because I think her power is probably going to be needed in the future of this fight with Poseidon Nero. I think so. It'll be good to see just how much she can control that power, I think now. With all that being said, the most interesting part of the chapter came into play when Hermit contacted Weiss about using his ether gear to stop whatever is causing the mania affecting the machines on the planet, which at this point definitely confirms what I had talked about previously, that some kind of broadcasting tower is responsible for pretty much for programming the machines with something like an electrical signal or a wave of electromagnetic electrodes that are reprogramming like the machine systems. And it would make the most sense now, considering that Weiss's ether gear can program and rewire machinery. So even if it's not a tower, even if it's not like an electronic tower specifically, at this point this chapter definitely did lay the groundwork that whatever is causing this reprogramming, it definitely is some kind of machinery that's doing this. Otherwise, Weiss wouldn't even be needed at all. The only question now is, when Weiss actually finds the source of this corruption, who exactly is going to be waiting there for him, guarding the damn thing? Because when it came to the part of this chapter where pretty much Weiss and Hermit were talking about what she needed Weiss to do, it gave me this very uneasy feeling that this little side mission is going to lead Weiss smack dab into a conflict with one of the Dark Stars. Again, maybe I'm wrong, and I don't know if Mashima's actually going to overdo it that much, but that's what this setup feels like to me. That pretty much that Weiss is basically headed into a fight he's maybe not fully prepared for. But yeah. And like he said, but honestly, it would also make the most sense in order for him to encounter a Dark Star or something, because that would also feed into the fact of that, yeah, this thing is going to affect the shining star, the star shines as well. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, one other fight aside from Rebecca's I'm really curious about is how Orc versus Shiki is going to play out, because as shown in this chapter, Orc is definitely much more of a powerhouse fighter, and while Shiki has fought people like that before, Orc's mechanical arm is one of the bigger decisive factors in this fight, seeing as how it seems to have multi-purpose use. And in the case of this fight, I wouldn't be surprised if Orc's arm can in some way negate Shiki's power, and just in general, there's a lot of uncertainty in this one fight, because even though obviously Shiki will win, it's how he's going to win is the bigger question, and the possibility he might be pushed to using his overdrive again. But I guess just to lay down the groundwork, the three major fights I'm going to be paying attention to are the Shiki versus Orc fight, the Rebecca versus Brittany fight, and whatever the hell kind of fight is possibly going to erupt when pretty much Weiss ends up encountering the pretty much like the machinery that's affecting that's affecting the robots and androids on this planet. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you've enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Mr. Crunchyroll. That Night of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.